You fell. All right, everybody, let's get started. I have an active cat around my phone, so if my phone shuts down, then you know what happened. It won't be because of me. All right, 24th December, 1953, number one, Memory and Journal. Oh, okay, buddy, come on, up there. At the previous pavilion meeting at D. Clarenbolt, we made the decision to publish a journal. We also pondered about the name we would give it. The question was raised. Buddy, stop. The question was raised and no one found it obvious. After a while, however, some titles were timidly put forward. I recall one of them, namely Journal de Bord. I would like to dwell a little on this title and try to clarify the journal's importance. On a ship, it is commonplace to say that one is between sky and water, that one is cut off from the world, that one is alone. This journal precisely is to fight against the possibility of letting oneself go, against that solitude. Every day a new sheet comes out, often poorly printed, without photos and bland. But every day that news sheet works to liven up the boat. In it, you are informed about the onboard news, recreation, cinema, concerts, and the next ports of call. You also learn, of course, about the news on land. The boat, though isolated, keeps contact with the outside, that is to say, with the world. Why? Because in 2 or 3 days, the passengers will meet up again with their parents and friends and return to their homes. Note that every traveler has a journal. The tourist sends cards or long letters to his friends in which he tells of his encounters. Storytelling is a very difficult discipline to acquire. I remember a young boy of 8 years of age who never managed to tell Little Red Riding Hoods properly, jumbling up all the different parts of the story. The discovery of writing is certainly the most beautiful one, since it allows you to recall yourself, to present things that have happened in order, and above all, to communicate with others, even when they are absent. 7th January, 1954, the third, Memory in Action. Some days ago, I drew a very abrupt reply. I asked a patient from Renaud what the date was. Quote, "How do you expect me to know the date? Every morning I am told to get up, to eat, to go to the courtyard. At noon I am told to eat, to go to the courtyard, and afterward to go to sleep. Nobody tells me the date. How would you expect that I should know what day it is?" The patient was clearly right. In the Middle Ages, a town crier was specially employed to announce the day and the hours. It was very useful. In modern times, we have calendars. We don't know where to put a calendar in a ward. And also, where do we get this calendar from? It is a very difficult problem to resolve. Miss Mina, for example, has to organize a recreational session for January 7th. For this, she will have to draw up a timetable. She was to know. No, stop messing with the. Stop it. She has to know that there are only a few days left to her. She has to get her companions and work with them. For Mrs. Manin's team, January 7th, it is an important date. Miss Manin's entire team is working towards January 7th. The rest of the ward, however, is waiting for January 7th, for the whole ward wants some entertainment. Similarly, Mrs. Don Noetti is preparing a recreational session for January 21st. For Miss Don Duane, this is a very important date. She and her team will have too much to do. This was told by a patient after asking whether the choir was working. Doctor, between the rehearsals, the walks, and the workshops, we barely have time to eat. Tomorrow is the Christmas performance. Next Sunday, we will set out on the path of media. Today, I wrote an article for the journal. Next Monday, during the meeting, I want to ask you a question, doctor. Such phrase shows precisely that it is possible to live in time. Days are not similar to one another, for each day demands a new plan of action. The calendar is a schedule of action. To rediscover the calendar, that is to say, time is to rediscover a work schedule. The patient from Renade was right. Who was in the wrong? Nobody. Everybody. Me, Miss Gill, Mr. Dassuage, and then perhaps, if one looks closely, one or two housekeepers. Well, everybody. De Clermont-Bolt was given us a lesson. We must examine it without special considerations for others, but also impartially. 21st January, 1954. Number 5, hospitalization or lockers. Yesterday, Friday, D. Clermont-Bolt received a visit from Mr. Limperia. Yesterday, Friday, D. Clermont-Bolt received a... Okay, I already said that. The hospital's treasurer accompanied by Mr. Najimi, the workers' messenger, and Mr. Rabbit and head builder. They held builder. This visit was motivated because only De Clermont, we were told, has had no renovations done since it's open. First, and after a first inspection, Mrs. Eligible presence, illegible presence and requirements of the ward: 1 locker per patient; 2 1 locker per orderly; 3 a space where Mrs. Indeligible. We looked at all the possible options. After 2 hours of looking into things, we were indeed obliged to recognize that none of the 3 requests could be met. Mr. Lempereur, after stating the first point, asked us very nicely if the night tables did not suffice. Then the observation was made that there weren't any. It was from him that I take the title of this article. Our patients cannot settle in. They must surely have the feeling of being in transit, and that is strictly accurate. I would go even further. The patients do not have the feeling of being anywhere. It is an establishment in which the patient's quality of being is a spouse or a mother is contested. This equality is contested as their marriage is deliberately ignored. It is an establishment in which they have nothing of their own, not even their face, since there is no mirrors. At De La Combrat, the patients are obliged to carry all small bags containing toothless combs, bread crust, ripped handkerchiefs, and lollies left by the latest visitors. These bags are objects that other covet, not the uncommon desire. I want your comb. Whence upon attempt at visual break-ins, the molecular. I'm gonna look up this word. Hold on a second, everybody. Did I answer your question? I don't know, did I? Why does that matter to you? Why are people worried about my position as a Marxist? Molecular. I think it's molecular. Of course, it won't do it. Macular. Okay. Macular reactions and motor discharges. The overall explosive behaviors that our orderlies so naively call agitation. But no modification will be able to make the ward into a pleasant place. Every inch of space is already used up, and the beds are all piled on top of one another. The patients obviously as well. The truth is that D. Clermont, can't say the name, was built to accommodate 90 beds. Today we have 168 beds in it. 1st of April, 1954, number 15. The ministerial curricular, was asked for psychiatric hospitals to detest with the attitude of calling hospitalized women by their maiden names. In terms of innovation, this curricular speculated that it was good to allow the patients to hold onto their personal clothes and their wedding rings. These small modifications seem unimportant, but it was always necessary to remember that mental illness is often manifest through the alteration in the notion of the I, the ego. To call a married woman, a mother of 2 or 3 children, by her maiden name means obliging her to take a step backwards. One of my friends, I recall, had a nom de guerre during the war and found it troublesome to be called by this name again in 1949. The point being that ever since the end of the war, he had regained another personality, one with different reactions, thoughts, and concerns. In 1950, he was no longer a member of the resistance. He had again adopted his official name, his normal life in the country that had regained its normal state. At each major shakeups of one's life, one needs to rediscover one's dimensions. One needs to stabilize one's position. We ought not to collaborate in the destruction of these positions. How many times have I felt that training needs to be carried out in certain hospitals? Staffs are sometimes not content to call patients by their maiden names and would instead use a first name or a nickname. Should do not to care to pause, such as, for example, the orderly who called a patient suffering hallucinations Joan of Arc. 8th April 1954, number 16. Future generations will ask themselves with interest why we were persuaded to build a psychiatric hospital remote from any center. Several patients have already asked me, "Doctor, will we hear the Easter bell ring?" I don't know. I don't want to answer the question because though I was only new to this hospital, I felt responsible for the fact that we are unable to hear the bells from here. Regardless of which religious attitudes you adopt, daily life is cadenced by the certain number of noises, and the church bells presents an important element of that symphony. In France, there is a poetry of the Angelus that the peasant close to the land lives in a very profound way. It is very likely that in small urban areas in Algeria, this sonorous melody also exists. Easter is coming, but the bells will not die to be born again because they have never existed in Blinda Psychiatric Hospital. The Blinda Psychiatric Hospital will continue to live in silence, a silence without bells. 5th April 1954, number 17. In one of the first articles that I wrote, I allude to those patients who, once hospitalized, erect between the outside world and themselves a very opaque screen behind which they immobilize themselves. These patients surrender, let themselves be won over by inertia. Some get the point of no longer knowing how to stand upright. They are the ones who see crouching down, laying, sitting in what is called the asylum yard. I also said that this letting go often manifests itself by a total forgetting of one's previous life, an indifference concerning time. These patients are no longer interested in knowing whether it is the month of January or December, the beginning or the end of the month, Thursday or Sunday. This is why I suggest that the psychiatric institutions first goal should be to establish against this background of inertia and indifference, some task, occupations, and timetables, including everything from integrating patients into a duty of helping the orderlies to bringing up soup to actively participating in the ward's recreational sessions, including walks outside and outside the hospital. This, hold on a second. I'm one of the biggest communists on the platform? No, I'm not. What? That's a lie. I think it was on the 22nd of April 1954, number 18. Yeah, at D. Clairvaux, a certain patient took walks in the park with a group of other patients each afternoon. One day, that patient had an attack mid-walk. The doctors altered her treatment to reduce the frequency of the attacks, but the new indication presented itself. It was necessary to wait some days before allowing the patients out again. So, to enforce this, the doctor advised the orderlies not to take the patients out on walks. Well, imagine the doctor's surprise the following day when he was literally taken to the task by the patient. In fact, you gave the order that I was not allowed to go out. You left the orders for the nurses, and you said, prevent her from leaving. Otherwise said an instruction that started off as medical was erroneously turned into police prohibition. The truth is that it is easier to say in the blanket fashion, quote, it's an order from the doctor, than to make two efforts. One, to understand the medical interests of such prescriptions, and two, to explain to the patient the reason for the temporary measure. In this way, rather than being what he should be, an element of equilibrium enabled a patient not to have to contend with insurmountable forces or incomprehensible prohibition. Rather than becoming the filter enabling the patient to expel from his mind the unusual fragments emergent during his illness, rather than being the doctor's immediate and essential collaborator, the orderly becomes, on the contrary, through the intervention of his errors, a disruptive element that the doctor will have to combat every day uniting with the doctor so that the patient in the ward find balance and a homogeneous atmosphere turn out to be one of the nursing staff's most fundamental tasks. Who's in here? Aisha, we're not going to bring up anybody else until someone else is getting we don't have many coins, Aisha. I'm so sorry. We really don't. 22nd May, 1954, number 23. Patient's relations with the outside world. You can never say enough about the painful feelings that patients endure when, from one day to the next, they are deprived of their homes, their patients, their parents, their friends. Hold on a second, I gotta appeal something. Always have to appeal, and they're not gonna do it, I bet. Their friends, and are hospitalized in an establishment that is sometimes 4 or 500 kilometers away from their usual places of residence. When hospitalization is deemed essential due to the state of the patient's health, this is not anything very serious as such. Yet the patient often gets the genuine impression that he is being interned. And we know that in people's mind, this world is synonymous with imprisonment. It is why the staff's attitude must be to help the patient get rid as quickly as possible of this mistrustful feelings towards the hospital establishment. The patient ought to be endured hospitalization as a kind of imprisonment, but instead as the only possible way to receive the maximum amount of treatment in the minimum amount of time, and for the entire duration of the hospitalization. We must strive to keep intact the link that unite the patients with the outside world. We must insist that the patients write to their families and friends as often as possible. We must insist that the patient receives visits as often as possible. The patient's place in society and his or her family must be maintained. It must be seen that in the incoming patients, not to desocialize. This is why the contested atmosphere of the hospital ward is detrimental to such a re-education of the personality. If possible, each patient needs to write at least once a week, keeping them integrated with society and close ties to the people outside, so when they get out, it might be easier to integrate and stuff. 3rd June 1954, number 24. In human communities, a perpetual temptation arises, and it is important to know how to encounter this perpetual temptation with the attitude of refusal. Ramadan was celebrated, and then came the end of Ramadan. Normally, the end of Ramadan is celebrated with joy, with enthusiasm. Well, as someone matter of factly put it, in this hospital, the occasion was not marked. I have always linked the expression of care nursing. To care for someone is not only to give him or her the possibility not to die. It is above all to give him or her the chance to live. Well, for a Muslim, to live also means to have the chance to celebrate the end of Ramadan. Each year, it seems this has been done. This year, nothing was done. We may see for the next Muslim celebration a veritable fireworks of rejoicing. These are, I think this is his journal stuff, what he wrote in his journal stuff. 10 June 1954, number 25, celebration and recreation. 10 days ago, the open service, very successful, put on a celebration for the patients. The celebration had everything: skill, effort, play, and crucially, it had many spectators, a very pleasant setting, and a very appreciable silence. On this day, in the open service, the atmosphere was thus important, profound humans. On this day, in the open service, we had the material proof of what must be done. The open service thus provided the material proof that 100 patients of various divisions can all come together as if in an auditorium. Collective life, the chance to put on a play for others, to see people putting on a play for others, the necessity for some to follow the play, to respect the play, the necessity of the others to the play, the game, to take the game of its maximum of truth, balance, or accuracy, the necessity for all to make possible at hospital, balance, poetry, an order of aesthetic demonstrations. The open service has shown us the possibility of all that. It has shown us its richness. For the open service, what would be good now is not to stop here, not to believe that the proof can be given in one go. What the open service needs to do is invite us again in 15 days' time. 24th June 1954, number 27. A letter from Ahmed Noé to M, the head doctor, 5th Division. Last evening during the feast day arrangements on Home Est y Homi, which is all French, was played. I say it turned in turn that a woman, because apart from the song that charmed the ears of the audience in those soft feminine voices, some sense from les bourgeois, gentle homie, which is another French phrase, were played, in which Mr. Jourdan and his valet were portrayed by women. This meant that the sound and the articulation were missing, nor was there any charm or attraction. Why then, doctor, are male patients not called upon to participate insofar as they are able to perform a role in performance such as this? Why then are the men removed from the women? You reproached me one day of being distrustful. But what then do you call that? You will tell me that these were precautions, but the patients were never left alone. Why then is there a gap that creates timidity in some and fear in others? Why then make things abnormal through such separation, while many patients are reproached for not being sociable? Why avoid bringing people together in way to end the spirit of longing driving them, some for the others, when they see each other from afar, in which even works over one's mind? Where then is our society, doctor, of the PHB? In short, it doesn't exist. You are in favor of individualism. There is no mistake of it. No mistaking it. You, with your lucidity, I hope that all this will soon end, doctor, at least concerning our ward. Doctor's notes. Mr. Nawiz's article is very important. The author indicates certain things that he deems anomalous in a hospital. Those self-declared goals is the organization of social life for its borders. Mr. Nowiz is therefore right to ask why the male patients and the female patients are separated from one another. He is right to emphasize that it would be good if the theater performance offered more of a chance for different borders to meet with each other and not to have male roles played by women and vice versa. But the author of that article forgets or ignores certain things. First, in the open service, men and women do rehearse together and perform plays together, which therefore proves, contrary to what Mr. Naud thinks, that mistrust is not an issue here. The truth is that we have no common theater space in the hospital in which we can gather all patients together. The day that this theater exists, I think that there will be no difficulty in having men and women of the hospital come together. But as things currently stand, it is hard to see this deal could be realized. So, Mr. Naud, do not speak of mistrust, and do not say that the society of which we speak is only a dream. On the contrary, it is very real, but demands to be built with calmness and prudence and measure. 15th July, 1954, number 30, from the Moorish Cafe to social life. There was quite an uproar in that room, filled with multicolored streamers and unusual tables. The uproar has died down. It is a good thing, but the room remains, and some precious lessons have come out of the continuation. The Moorish Cafe is a social reality. In France, according to recent statistics, there is one cafe for every 78 inhabitants, children, women, and the aged included. That means that the cafe is not an exception to social life, but that it predominates on all street corners. So the cafe was a necessity about it. So the cafe has a necessity about it. The cafe corresponds to a need, a social need. The cafe is a social institution. In France, the cafe is frequent by women. In France, the cafe is a society, in a sense in which one says, I'm going out to socialize. In Algeria, the cafe also exists. Algerians are accustomed to going to the cafe. Yet there is an essential difference between it and the European cafe. In Algeria, the cafe is frequented excessively by men. It is a society of men, and it is the men's living room. The women visit each other at home. The men meet each other at the cafe. The cafe is the property of those who go there. That is to say, the consumers behave at the cafe a little as if they were at home. The Moorish Cafe at Redon introduced into the hospital an embryo of social life that ought to be taken to its fullest. I didn't win my appeal. I have to appeal again. I love how many times I did fucking appeal. It's fucking wild. 2nd July 1954, number 31. So they're just trying to keep like the social activities inside, so they're not like, so they can keep connected to social activities. 22nd July 1954, number 31. At this time, the Belinda Jovial Psychiatric Hospital is part of a 20 psychiatric hospital involved in developing constellations of socially structured activities for the hospitalized patients. As Dr. LeContin said recently these activities are to be intensified daily. Now, who is to carry out that intensification? It is the various hospital teams in question that will make this progressive enrichment possible. If the hospital receptionist is unwelcoming to visitors, these visitors may not want to come back. We must never forget that our patients are not merely from the region, but also sometimes from Gordadia, AIA, and even from Tanzania, who are aware that for many people, mental illness is a chronic illness, and that, as the saying goes, when you come here, you never ever leave. If the visitor's contact with us is disagreeable, we may use it as a reason not come back. And who is going to suffer from this? The patient, the parents. But if, on the contrary, the receptionist is friendly, courteous, if he is not seen by a sentinel, but rather as someone who is there to put patients within the reach of visitors, well, then this is one reef less. I was struck, and those who read the second last issue of our journal must have been as well, by the recognition that most of our patients felt towards the driver. All of them said that the driver drove at the average speed, an appropriate speed for the excursion. There would have been two ways to drive: to go from the hospital to the designated place and return again in the manner of a chore. A drive or drive 40 borders at the pleasant speed enabled them to appreciate and savor the excursion. The driver took the latter option, and he did well. More, he did the right thing. 5th August, 1954, number 33. This issue deals somewhat with the question of Adele Kabar, which is I don't know which language that's in. Next week, we'll deal even more with this question. The Muffet in Belinda has accepted to come and visit the Muslim borders and our hospitals for the occasion at 10 a.m. and if possible, to preside over the Mass at the mosque. We hope that this first encounter between the official Muslim religion and our patients is the prelude to regular, and therefore more edifying events. When we speak about putting at the patient's disposal a multiplicity of frameworks, an infinite variety of tasks, great attention must be paid to not forgetting to reach out to the majority of the hospital patients. I don't know how to say this word. Celebration is proof that we are trying hard to take them into account. I think it's Arabic. You're right. 19th August, 1954, number 35, Towards a Living Journal. Important things were at stake at the Journal Committee meeting on Saturday, July 31st. Serious things. The committee took to making a pronouncement on a value of vague and imprecise texts. The question was asked as to why these articles are so woolly, so obscured, so incomprehensible. One of the authors, I believe, supplied the answer to the problem. The patients know what he or she puts into his or her text, and that is enough for him or her. Others don't matter. However, who does not see that grasped in this way, the journal thus becomes the accomplice of what it claims to be combating. The journal's mission is not to make public so-and-so fictional, or irrelevant fantasies. The Weekly Ward Journal aims to make public the community's effort and accomplishment. We at the hospital do not inquire any internal dramas, any imminent enthusiasm. We have need to speak a simply what we need to is to speak a simple, direct, topical, true language. We need to think in the way that is reflective, not fragmented, but instead pulled together. We need dialogues, precisely because dialogue renders us presence to our comrades and to the committee. The journal helps us to think things through and communicate our impressions with the entire hospital. To write means to want to be read. In the same stroke, it means to want to be understood. In the act of writing, there is an effort being made. Muddled and vague things are combated, surpassed. It is about not enclosing yourself in holy dreams. It is not about emanating oneself. On the contrary, owing to the large number of texts that appear in it, the journal serves as a place of getting to know oneself. If two boarders relate the same outing, you will see that the tone of each of the articles change, not because the style is the person, but because the tone changes. The complainer, who always has something to criticize, recognizes himself, since for him everything is bad. It is by writing and by reading what the others write that the complainer perceives that he does not think exactly like the others. Then an effort to think with measured ideas can arise in him. 2nd September 1954, number 37. I think this person's still in there. Okay. Some weeks ago, the patients of D. Clermont assembled to elect the members of the Record Collections Committee. This committee is tasked with procuring the records that the boarders request the most, and with organizing the fortnightly listening sessions. Once a sufficient number of records have been collected, the committee members will go to the various wards and hear their comrades' requests. The most sought after records are the ones that will be played on the day of the listening session. So it may be that dance number, melodies, and symphonic music will get played on one and the same day. As we ask all those with musical training to present themselves on the day of the event in question as technical advisors. These technicians will be able to make commitments about the records. Along the same lines, the hope is that at Renewed, the Record Collection Committee will be created for playing Arab records of Muslim patients. Everything that facilitates meetings and contacts is a good thing. Let's hope that the first listening session will be arranged as soon as possible. 7th October 1954, number 42. During the last Journal Committee meeting, a delegate from the 1st Division surprised a large number of us. He told us that most of his comrades were in fact unaware of the journal's existence. He himself, he told us, had thought that a mere 2 or 3 issues had appeared up against such a situation. 2 explanations can be put forward. 1, the boarders were indifferent to manifestation of collective life. The journal's soirées, which is in French, outings, cinema, are thus to be interpreted as distracting elements, valueless, meaningless, dead ends, and not as possibilities for meaning. And we must no longer endeavor to link together to socialize. On the contrary, we must recognize that all these things appear in the atmosphere of total indifference, so that the reasonable attitude is to interrupt them. 2, there could be a second explanation, so that a group triggers the involvement of particular individuals. It must provide the different personalities with what might be called fields of action. Do all these groups, all these committees really allow for such involvement? Does the elementary primordial commonplace palpitations arise that is the heart itself of civility? Mr. Cohen's bitter observation is in reality the most severe criticism that can be directed at us. But it is productive because ultimately Mr. Cohen is on the committee and he has promised to open up our journal. 14th October 1954, number 43. Everything had a beginning. I don't know where that. Okay, you're up there. Everything had a beginning. People who are certainly well-intentioned, but poorly informed, or who have a short memory, seem to believe and want to spread the notion that a social life was first organized for patients at HPB only some months ago. Well, it is enough to throw a look backwards to observe that. Number one, the arranging of work activities dates practically from the birth of the hospital nearly 20 years ago, both on the farm as well as in the workshops or sewing rooms. For several years already, the products made in sewing rooms have been used to improve a lot of patients and, in particular, the workers, the age of the children. 2. Recreation has been arranged for patients for several years already. All the wards have been supplied with radio sets. Films are screened each week. The library loans books to all patients. Feast days have been organized several times each year. Sports fields have been created. 3. Contacts with outside were not being neglected. Many patients have been into town with their families, orderlies, and even by themselves. A group of women has regularly attended the cinema club session in Belinda. Men regularly went to football matches. Other patients have been to the traveling circuses. 4. Each year, the doctor's report has asked that future improvements be made, some of which decided long ago only saw the light of day in 1954. Outings to the seaside and setting up the open service as well as a nursing school. All this is the result of patience and quietly undertaking work, performed in friendly cooperation among all the various doctors who have followed one another in sessions here at HPB ever since its creation. To add a pavilion to a building and have to repaint does not mean that it has been entirely built. The strictest steadfastness is the essential condition of correct social relations. This is why this short historical reminder appears essential. Dr. Markuta, Fanon, Remy, Lucanton, De Korker, 21st October 1954, number 44. Mr. Cohen's article certainly made an impression on the journal committee, hence the suggestion that it be published in full. However, it is important to be careful not to render the elements of social life at HPB abstract. The idea of the committee is a small parliament is not true, nor are the doctors and ministers. But the article does have some generous ideas expressed in it. The little parliament. This week, October 14th, journal provides us with a large list of social organizations in the clinic. I am, however, surprised not to find one line concerning our journal, those whose creation extends back more than a year, and those activities prove more interesting in each passing week. If among all the planned or already operational projects, it was permitted to state a preference, I would point out that the creation of our journal, which has turned out to be an organ of the highest value, it provokes the boarders, personalities, and gives them back their souls. It is a powerful link between us all. It is also a vehicle of understanding and a remarkably effective agent of connection. For those who have attended the journal committee meetings, you would say to look like a small parliament setting opposite of council of ministry. There, where one side states its wishes and argues for them, and the other side notes them down, examining and subjecting everything to scrutiny with a little imagination. Do we not see these males and females delegates coming out of the meeting and returning to their comrades, conveying to all that has been said and done as a report of their mandates? This is not a small institution, and it is an institution not on the basis of all social life. Cohen, 1st Division. 19th November, 1954, number 48. Mr. Kaszora, on the occasion of her article, raises the important question about the elaboration of social life at the hospital, the festivity room. We must come to a declarbat regis magnan of the evenings when the theater play is being put on to see the fever that reigns there. The patrons are obliged to eat quickly. The washing up, cleaning, polishing must be done. Then the decorating, the adorning, the place in which the theatrical and artistic performance are to unfold must be made pleasant and enjoyable. Soon dozens and dozens of men and women, boarders, people that they're calling them boarders, and of invited guests will be arriving. Everything must be clean. Everything must be beautiful. In haste, the stage has had to be arranged with the help of tables, and the electricians have come to install everything quickly. Would it not be an infinitely more enjoyable to have a real festival hall with the whole arrangement at the very core of the hospital, both independent and grandiose? Yes, I think it is. 25th November 1954, number 49. In 1953, a series of reports appeared in the World. Some were elaborated at the behest of the World Health Organization by the Committee of Experts. Our journal published some extracts of the report devoted to the public psychiatric hospital. Once again, it seems to me important to recall one of the fundamental givens of this report. The committee considered that no psychiatric hospital ought to exceed 1,000 beds. Of course, adds the committee, some hospitals exceed these dimensions, but everything must nonetheless be done to discourage this sort of hospital from being built. But let's hear what the committee has to say. The arguments raised are in general based on the pure patients and pure day cost reductions that a larger establishment is able to accomplish. However, the widespread opinion according to which the very large hospitals are more economic turns out to be baseless. Recent studies have shown that from the viewpoint of financial economy, the optimum capacity of hospitals is probably situated between 250 and 400 beds. Smaller establishments are wondrous owing to their weak confidence and coefficient of occupations and the difficulties in amortizing technical equipment that is not fully utilized. Above 400 beds, the cost per bed increases slowly and reaches excessive value. With 800 beds, the cause probably reside in the uncontrollable wastage of the lack of the spirit of responsibility on the part of the various numerous staffs, the useless purchases, and the industrial type of machination that is inevitably in large establishment. 3rd December 1954, second year, number 2. The special issue of our journal was devoted to the New Year celebration. Also celebrated was, in a sense, the first anniversary of the establishment. Weekly Journal. The reporters have written some very beautiful things on this topic. These articles express the earnestness of great worth. It is paradoxical to note, incidentally, that the distance that exists between those who write and those who read. If it is true that such earnestness does not always manage to reach the readers, it seems that an average can be attained fairly easily. However, many of our journal readers do not seem to gauge the entire importance of the texts that appear in it. Thus, in number 51, Mr. Mueller made some gentle reproaches to the organizers of the Magnanan celebration. Number 52 contains a reply to that criticism. We'll do better the next time. But the criticism was not unintelligent or disagreeable. It was, in a sense, a piece of advice to ensure that our celebrations for all turn out better. The boarders who write in the journals do not do it for the sake of doing something. They each express something that prevails for them. The act of writing is already a higher act. The act of reading as well. 13th January 1955, second year, number 4, regarding a visit. The transfer of patients to the hospital that had treated in Lyon afforded me the occasion to spend a day with you all. I visited the ward, and I would like to make use of your journal in order to tell you the impression it has made on me. A modern hospital, new wards, well kept and well arranged. That's what strikes one from the first. But that is not the most important thing. A visitor used a psychiatric hospital is less sensitive to the decor, as beautiful as it may be, than he is to the atmosphere that prevails in it. And in our establishment, that atmosphere struck me. No sterile relentlessness, no throne of people around the doctor as he passed through a ward. Each person is busy with his or her work and interest in it. Our nurses do not monitor you, but really live among you, side by side, participating in the same activities as you. I saw your Moorish Cafe. It's a genuine cafe with genuine customers, an excellent terrain for relearning gestures of the outside world. I saw your stadium, the result of your work. I can be proud of it. It will serve well. I saw your Rafa workshops, your printing facilities, your journal. I like the arrangement of your treatment rooms and the competency of your nurses. Of course, many things are still left to be done. There are many of you, and there ought to be work for all of you, and not only for most resourceful. You live alongside one another, and you often don't know each other. The group activities, the occupations that you are offered, must become an occasion for getting to know one another, for getting you reaccustomed to living with one another. I take my leave with your journal in hand, and I hope that it will form an active link and be a source of fruitful exchange between Belinda and Leon. Dr. Gabbs. Wait, TikTok keeps crashing. I told it no, and it puts me up here anyway. Okay.
Yeah, I literally, Linda invited me. I said no, and it said, yeah, you're going up there.
Yeah. 22nd January 1955, second year, November, number 6. In the articles that we kindly wrote for our journal, Dr. Gabbs wrote, I saw your Moorish Cafe, a genuine cafe, with genuine customers and excellent terrain, relearning gestures of the outside world. To relearn, I find this expression very beautiful. Let's understand it. Let's understand by it that what it at issue is not to give to the boarders a stock of movement, attitudes, and words. At issue is not to add into the existent personality of some of behaviors. At issue is not to create, to produce, to refine, to finish. It is a matter of enabling the boarders to reprise, to begin again by helping him or her to understand better, to grasp things better. That is to say, to grasp him or herself better again. The point cannot be to say that is all worthless. It must all be destroyed. At issue, once again, it is to provide the broader with frames, groups, and occasions within which it becomes possible for him or her to rediscover what has existed. It is necessary to induce the boarders to rediscover the meaning of freedom, which, of course, I wasn't approved. Which it becomes possible for him or her to rediscover what has existed. It is necessary to induce the boarders to rediscover the meaning of freedom, which is the first milestone on the way to responsibility. The quest for the personality of the one who is entrusted to us has to be our continual concern. 17th March, 1955, second year, number 13. There are no other topics for mediation than those forming the focus of this issue. Such are the questions I have heard this week. Do the male and female boarders at this establishment not have different preoccupations, different concerns, ones that are less immediated, less down to earth, more elevated? And it could be felt that the tone of these diverse reflections, that the consideration of criticisms to do with food is this issue where adjudged inappropriate and valueless. For my part, I do not think that such attitudes, with their extremism play a role in the concrete and daily preoccupation of this hospital. Eating is not a chore for humans. Eating is not inferior to thinking. And I don't see why consideration about food should yield an aesthetic concern. The person who is concerned with what he or she eats, who requests that the dishes, though less abundant, be better prepared, who point out that the food is being served cold, that the fish is always covered in sauce, and that the vinaigrette is often only vinegar, who bemoans that dessert is such a rare event, who notes that some dishes are pungent by virtue of their polymorphous character, ravioli, and for the reason that are given possible presence of pork for Muslim boarders. The boarders who ask for food that caresses the plate and who therefore inspires to turn soup into a meal. I don't see that this patient is doing anything else other than developing the sense of a taste of nuance. This striving to take an interest concretely on the daily basis and with accuracy is a highly elevated form of sociability, and we ought to congratulate the boarders who have produced this issue. Nice. So they're giving them a sense of emancipation and freedom and stuff to be able to say their words. 24th March 1955, second year, number 14. The orderlies from the established went to France to take further professional training courses. Their professor's major concern, it seems, was to present a program concerning that is currently known as social therapy. The orderlies were struck by the effort that the speaker puts in to show just how indispensable it is to have a cordial understanding among themselves. The orderlies were obliged to arrange evening gatherings every day in order to demonstrate clearly the necessity for such perfect cordiality. Let's take some of the phrases uttered by the professors. The patient's life must be as close as possible to ours, including his or her washing, clothing, meals, occupations, affections, and consideration. People need love, affection, and poetry in order to live. Patients show this deprivation in their illnesses by closing up it inside themselves. In the near future, the orderlies who have participated in the course will write a summary of their impressions of our journal. 7th April, 1955, second year, number 16. The sport meeting, now scheduled on our football field each Thursday, attracts a considerable crowd. It seems to be taking a growing interest in the game itself and in the exploits of its favorites players. It must be noted that hitherto the most enthusiastic spectators and the noisiest ones are the orderlies present at the stadium. This is not a bad thing, however, as sporting passion is communicative. Even better, the number of boarders playing it is actually growing, for 3 teams have now officially been created. Besides, even for the uninitiated, their technical level and skills are on display insofar as the players regularly go to training sessions. Equipment, jerseys, socks, balls are recently procured through the product of the boarders. Work is contributed to our hospital field. The proceeding contains words that all hang upon one another: game, team, training, work. Training for a team game is at the same time a training for work, because work enables favors, justifies the game. That whole must remain a solid institution. Dr. LeConte. 14th April 1955, second year, number 17. The institution was the central issue of a previous editorial, and the great merit of the definition put forward of it was the importance granted to the movement. The equilibrium between the team game, regular training, and orderly and creative work confers in the institution both its solidity and its plasticity. For there, the following question must be asked, and is asked: is very institutions not in consistent danger of vivitation? Or again, does not every attempt to give body to the institution risk-taking directions that are fundamentally opposed to the open, Foucault, global and nevertheless qualified character of the institution. You have to place yourself at the heart of the institution and integrate it. If it is an generous source, it must enable multiple personalities to be manifested in it. It has to make possible interminable and fruitful encounters, and it was to be multiplied consistently. It has to be at the disposal of its members and at their service. If it does not radiate, if it fails to achieve this essential duty, which is consistent dialogue between its members, if it permits collective monologue, and if, lastly, it does not foster its members responsibly, then its time is up. One is on the wrong path. 14th July 1955, second year, number 30. Last month, juries constituted by members of the Académie des Sciences, Bastille Letters, L'Art, which is all in French, at Clermont-Ferrand, was as well as members from the Société d'Artistes in Alvergy, I can't say the word, awarded works by boarders at the establishment in France and in its overseas territories. The Belinda Joinville Psychiatric Hospital committed to participating in this major national competition by sending 2 works along. A painting by Dr. Dombey in the first division, and a miniature by Mr. Ramen in the second. A letter from the General Secretary of the Société des Croix Marie, which is all in French, informs us that the miniature received joint first prize. By contrast, Mr. Dombey's painting, likely held up by the customs services, arrived after the jury deliberation. In spite of this delay, the Secretariat decided to reward this work. I can't say it, it's in French. The theme of this boarder's work, and our jury prize. What lessons ought we draw from this competition? It is very clear one. As we see, namely, that it is necessary to go on. It is absolutely necessary that we be part of the network of avant-garde establishment, in which such events, both manifold and diverse, facilitate social relations, call for comparison development, and field for trials and concerns of accomplishment. They want to keep them in social relations, not take it away from each other. 28 July 1955, second year, number 32. 1 year ago, the Moorish Cafe opened its door in Ranun. This anniversary is an interesting one to mark. But be that as it may, how can we not singularly delight in noticing that the Moorish Cafe, which once upon a time represented an only meeting place for boarders, has now lost its central character, its character as an exception. Indeed, we've seen many other meeting places pop up here and there. The Asian saloon for Muslim women, Oriental, yeah, and Ferret, and Ganguti, and Magnan Park. So they said Ori, and I'm not going to finish that because it's a slur against Asian people. And like people like in the so-called Middle East is Western Asia. We are pleased to observe the very widening social relations at our establishment, and we hope that these efforts will continue to enable us always to forge further ahead. 11 August 1955, second year, number 34. Not so long ago, a few decades, heroes proved themselves on the battlefield to struggle against death, and most of the time to bring about the death of the other. Not so long ago, heroes distinguished themselves through exceptional acts, through uncommon attitudes. The hero was different in kind. It is one of the merits of the contemporary era to have shown the banal, everyday aspects of a modern-day hero, one lacking in splendor. The famous expression of one of our novelists is not the mere racecrack, marriage as in tragedy of modern times. Very precisely, this author is alluding to the sort of repetition that is bound to result in enrichment, to the apparent immobility that is internal fecundity. The hero is not one who performs a dazzling feat and goes to bed considering he's done enough. The hero is rather one who gets through his or her task with consciousness, with conscientiousness and love. Every day without haste, but also unremittingly, he waves his work with precise order. For the worst mistake is to believe that the work undertaken, if it is abandoned, even for a moment, remains intact. Sections after sections, it falls apart. A person makes or unmakes him or herself every day. Every day, the task has to be conducted with tenacity. All right, here we go. 25th August, 1955, second year, number 36. In a few days, the Borders journals will undergo a major event. In fact, the ideal of having a genuine printing facility has taken shape, and the matter is now to acquire it. Naturally, several problems will emerge. The first is the location. At De La Corbette, a small room was made available to our journal, with the machine's small dimensions in mind. Now the new printer is going to be far larger, and so a real workshop must be found for it. The bursar will make the seller of Rogues de Frocas, which is in French, available to us. But this operation depends upon the evacuation of the mosque's ergotherapy annex, which itself depends upon. We are going to have to wait a while. In any case, a tent will be provisionally assigned to the printer. Then there is the staff. Up to now, the women boarders of De Clermont have seen to the printing of the journal, but it is clear that they will not be able any longer to ensure the operation of a machine like the one we have decided to buy. It would be good if male boarders could step up and take care of the printing. Lastly, the third problem, and not the last of them, the quantity of articles. It has often transpired that a lack of space prevented some articles from being published. But very often, all too often, the articles were actually too few. Now that the journal hopes to come out with a total of 4 pages, the instruction is formal. Everyone must write. The hospital, as the sociologists say, has gone from the oral phase to the written phase. Interesting. All right, we're coming up. I'm in chat. TikTok keeps crashing. Okay, no problem. 22nd October, 1955. Second year, November, number 45. Mr. Bozul, last article written on the occasion of his leaving, proved if it were needed, the necessity of the interests of the various committees. His advice was not to give up on the committees. Those who have taken it upon themselves to be present each time perhaps know the internal and external difficulties that must be overcome in order, for example, to be at the journal committee meeting on Friday at 9:30 a.m. How many times have only 6 or 7 of us shown up out of the 2,000 boarders in the establishment? Zill knows this. That is why his article was valued for us as a testimony. Accomplish the plane's issues by the committee. Naturally, how can we not think about the float of flowers or about July 14th? Come to the committees. Work to accomplish the plans made, and little by little you will get back into the activity of social life. Mr. Bazon's article is one of the most important of the year. November 17th, 1955, second year, 48. Why do we want at all costs to have a journal within the psychiatric establishment? Why might the ideal of a journal of Mustafa or Marigot Hospital seem absurd? Why is it that for 10 years now, so many journals have appeared in psychiatric hospitals? What is the real importance of these journals? What use is a journal in a hospital, and more precisely in a psychiatric hospital? By way of the editorial, I would like to submit this questionnaire to the establishment's boarders and staff. The responses should be passed on to our journal editorial board on occasion of the anniversary of our journal. Such a survey can be significant. The hope is that large numbers of replies will be forthcoming. 28th March 1956, third year, number 31. One of the difficulties encountered in the exercises of the profession is doubtless habits. The moment arrives fairly quickly when gestures follow other gestures without novelty. A big effort of imagination is required to discover, or in any case, to allow the appearance of an atmosphere in constant movement. In the hospitals such as ours, a large effort must be made to avoid automatism, not optimism, but automatism from settling in. Days ought not to be like other days, hours not like other hours. When we work on trees or on stones, the modification alone, the changes alone, the novelties alone are the deed of our personal history. In the hospital, where we work with human beings, things proceed entirely differently. We really, hello baby, hello my baby, hello. We are really working with people. So if people, I love you. Whoa, okay, kiss. What? All right, sorry. We really work. Okay, hold on. We really are working with people. So if people are what constitutes the goal, that is the goal of our daily action, then it becomes clear. It becomes necessary. Not that no dose of habits, of habituation, of automatism can intervene. For people have the extraordinary quality of being in constant renewal, meeting the obligations to understand day by day, day in, day out, the people with whom we come face to face, whom more precisely are entrusted to us, is one of the most important elements of the professions of nursing. 28th June 1956, third year, number 27. Following an error, a letter from the boarders at Jean Lapine about a chapel and the mosque was conveyed to the journal, laying out a difficult problem. But in fact, there is no problem at all. It is enough to explain how the image of the mosque came to be in a journal header, to prevent anyone from assigning it a meaning other than it has. During the summer of 1954, a decision was made to improve the somewhat ordinary header of our journal by adding a drawing with local character. Several proposals were put forward and examined, and the one accepted was a depiction of a mosque, not as a symbol of Muslim religion, but as a monument of typically Algerian architecture. Had some thought of it, the palm trees, the chaos at the Place des Mers in Blenda could equally have been chosen. With this clarified, it is very evident that no one has any reason to create a polemic around the journal. Above all, it must be highlighted that we should avoid all occasions to create divisions or opposition. The arranging of social life within the hospital is based on the existence of friendly relations between boarders, regardless of their origins, their religion. This is why the meeting points and occasions our meetings have been increased. The day that people endeavor to make a big deal out of what separates us from each other, we will see a myriad of committees and subcommittees appear. Arabic people, Kalabis, Mozabites, Algerian French, with subcommittees for the regions of Oran, Algiers, and Constantine, Metropolitan French with subcommittee per region. And we ought to not forget the group of the non-grouped for those who are unable to find a place in the preceding groups. The day the day it comes to this, there will be no need to dissolve all the current organizations that tend towards the improvement of life in common. They will have dissolved themselves. So since life obliges us to spend some weeks or months together, it is not better to seek out occasions for friendly relations. On this point, the football teams provide a remarkable example, and all the outside spectators stated upon leaving the stadium. Our matches are far friendlier than more decent than those played by teams outside. Good examples do not always come out from outside. It is true, and in all domains, it is necessary that this spirit of sportive loyalty and of friendly coexistence become the hospital's rule of living, head doctors of the wards. That's cool. July 19th, 1956. Third year, NOS 29 through 30. In some wards, competition takes place in the dining halls, rooms, corridors, and living rooms. What is judged, evaluated, rewarded are not things like cleanliness, beds with hospital corners, etc. The jury does not make pronouncements on the incidental aspects, as seen on the occasions of inspections of official visits. This basis of the jury, its system of reference, has more to do with the general outlook of the ward, its open, non-coercive character. What the jury's members are looking for is life of movement, the involvement of the boarders, their commitment, their engagement. What is judged is an importance. That is, insofar as it is true that the ward is and remains the essential therapeutic arm. To say about a ward that it has to be therapeutic in its structure is tantamount to reiterating that the boarder's day, from waking to sleeping, necessitates a rational organization. It is within spontaneous and institutionalized groups that the boarders, through the play of preferences and wishes, respond and commit. These members of the group and staffs never adopt the aspect of observers or censors. Yet, to the contrary, a staff member's nuanced and balanced engagement enables the group to become organized and a source of life. 4th October 1956, third year, number 41. We must pay tribute we must pay tribute as a proper to a near completion of the stadium. We can already say that the construction of the sport block of the hospital will be finished in 3 years' time. Now, the important thing is in this little story is less the thickness of the walls or the solidity of the seats, that the progressive thriving of the establishment, sporty atmosphere. Additionally, teams, the inclusion of training staff in the teams, an official calendar, membership cards, and homogeneity of unanimously adopted training programs, a real sport committee. All these advances of importance, and therefore the style indicate that still need doing. And of course, all is not yet finished. The column, it may be seen, is not necessarily an institution. The psychiatric hospital, like every collective, demands two directions of evolution, one horizontal and the other vertical. This means that adding more committees on top of the others is one thing, and infusing life into each committee transforms each committee into words of truth and enrichment is another. There is nothing immediately obvious about this, for the lie is not the fact of the isolated individual. Each impairment to truth was something complicitous. I'm going to look at this word. First word. I don't like when people look up to me and think that I'm like, and I like put them down. It's like, that's why we don't do great man on people. Everybody is not free from criticism. Come on, let me say it.
Complicitous.
Complicitous. Being involved with others in an illegal, underhanded, and moral wrong activity. About it. Hi, Davey. Last year, teams A and B were somewhat meaningless. Likewise, the open service team, backed up by Randud. You must always ask, what is the question here? It is to provide boarders with the type of motor commitment to offering opportunities for rapid integration that open into a shared existence, or else to enable the pseudo-ludic identification with a strong expositionist charge for the staff. There is no doubt the reply today, but it may have been necessary to pass through this self-criticism, which is the criterion of the truth, of the true. Staff as a whole, through the gravity that presides over the current committees, has displayed a radical awareness. Let's go. It is time for work. 8th November 1956, third year, number 46. When two people meet and decide to live together, they come to agreement on a certain number of points. Between them, some things are permitted and some things are prohibited. The advised things pertain to morality and the prohibited things to law. Every social group implies and requires, among other things, moral authorities, legal authorities. It therefore seems that the concern for sports committees with elaborating general disciplinary regulations with sanctioned penalties is proceeding in a customary way. In the first part, we will publish the committee draft proposal for the list of regulations, and in second, present some reflections on it. Rules and regulations, measured of order, Art 1. Measures of orders will be applied to players whose conduct was the subject of an incident or a disorder before, during, or after the match, and notably for any improper attitude towards the referee, officials, or spectators. Art 2. The following scale has been established. 1. Impropriety towards spectators and insulting a spectator. Impropriety towards the adversary, insulting or threats, assaulting an adversary or mutually assaults. 3. Wrongs committed against a ref, against a lying judge, or an obligatory ref. A. Offensive remarks. B. Insults. C. Provocative acts or threats. D. Assaults. A suspension of 1 or 3 matches. 3. A player sent from the field upon the decision of the ref has 24 hours to address a detailed and written account of the incident or reasons that led to his or her being sent off. 4. A disciplinary committee must meet within 6 days. It made up of players' trainers. 6. It is presided by a member of the management committee. All persons, rather leaders or players, who are singled out by the ref are obliged to front up to the disciplinary committee. The referees is also obliged to file a complaint for the matters they have singled out. 5. Notifications of measures to be taken will be provided by the disciplinary committee to the interest party after the latter have been heard and supplied all explanations. 6. A reprieve made by granting following a request to the head doctor. Okay, I'll read one more and then we'll be done. 15th November.
Something about that one.
What?
I said, can I say something about that one?
Sure.
Isn't that what we call like restitutional justice?
You mean it's not restitutional? It's it's not restitutional. Restorative.
Restorative justice. Yeah, that's
in a sense, yes. It seems like it. 15th November, 1956, third year, number 47. I don't know much about restorative justice. I just know that, like, the basics, like, outlining of it, but it sounds like it. I could be wrong, but it sounds like it. So, who knows? 15th November, 1956, third year, number 47. Punishment, court, inquiries, filing, reprieve. The draft of the rules and regulations uses these words with astonishing ease. It is is it standard for a committee with therapeutic pretensions to employ such words in this way? Yes, it seems. If the aim is in fact to care for someone, ought the emergency of normal, ordered socialized behavior be facilitated? And then, is it not important to single out, penalize, and sanction orderlies a social and improper attitudes? Let us see where this leads. If sport is therapeutic, it must serve to cure, to register abnormal behaviors, offensive words, insults, provocative gestures, assaults. Paragraph A, B, C, Art 2 of the regulations, to penalize to make sure its authors are thwarted and shamed. This is to force them to account for their actions, to give them a sense of responsibility, to facilitate their aptitude to defend their point of view, to present it in front of the group of their fellow patients. From that point of view, penalizing a player is neither more nor less than adopting within the establishment ways of proceeding that are common outside it. So it seems once again that having rules and regulations is the true and fair path to follow. This sanctions prepared the borders for life on the outside. The process of readapting the borders cannot be understood otherwise, for an adapted behavior is one that respects established rules, established customs. We will see the subsequent editorial that his position remains peripheral to the problem. The actual fact, things are far from complicated, and for starters, where does the desire to penalize come from? Where does the desire to penalize come from? And we'll stop there.
So I was thinking it's really cool that they had these things going on, because the last day I had, I was given crayons and a coloring book, and that's all I was able to do for 3 days. There was no games, there was no plays, there was no reading, there was nothing educational in the institution at all.
Yeah, 344. Yeah. This seems more like they want to keep the integration of society a factor within their development and growth. They don't want them to be. They want them to try to be as humanly as possible and to be considered and valued. You know, and that's like the whole point to going to these things, is to find some value in yourself. You know, and going on further, like Fanon says, and to release the chains and to liberate yourself. Yeah. So, yeah, these establishments can establish better, better societies in some sense. So, but anyways, anything else before I close it out? Yeah.
I paid close attention.
No, that's all good.
Pay close attention.
It's all good. All right, everybody. I am going to go ahead and close it out. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. If you did, thank you. And like anything, if anybody's in here and has any questions, come up. Let me know when you want to come up. All right, everybody.